Thank you for joining us today for the DotcomWeavers Magento 1 to Magento 2 migration webinar. We're here today to discuss, what we feel to be a critical topic for all Magento 1 businesses. As we go through the webinar, if questions come up, please add them in the comments section to your right, and we'll answer them at the end of the webinar during the Q&A session. So, all right, looks like we're all here. Again, if you can't hear us, just raise your hand and we will address that. So let's get to it. DotcomWeavers is a web development agency. We're headquartered in North Jersey, just outside of New York City. E-commerce has been our specialty since we got started in 2007. And in recent years, we've really taken on the identity of a Magento company. To date, we've created more than 100 Magento sites. We're a certified Magento business solution partner. And it really has been a great partnership to develop and a very effective one for our clients. So today we have 3 DotcomWeavers team members with us. My name is Reed. I am a content marketing strategist here at DotcomWeavers. I help our clients leverage their, the native marketing tools of platforms like Magento, help them integrate third-party tools to expand their reach, and really just help their customers help our clients talk to their customers. I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves, and then we'll get started.
Hi, my name is Malay. I'm a project manager and recently Magento certified solution specialist. I help our clients navigate, navigate the project. I help them identify the issues and work with them to resolve all of their pain points and take the project to completion.
Hello, everyone. My name is Amit Baya. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DotcomWeavers, and it's an honor to be part of this webinar today. Because we seem to be, this seems to be a very important topic for pretty much all of us, and more importantly for the business owners who are investing a lot of time and resources into technology to make sure that their e-commerce operations run as smooth as possible with the most ROI in terms of their, resources. And we think a lot of Magento customers who are on M1 going to M2 is a very critical discussion which is going on in the background, because as we all know, Magento 1 is something which would be coming to an end of life pretty soon. But at that point, at this point, what I'd like Reed to do is talk a little bit more about the details, and then obviously feel free to ask us any questions you have, and we would reserve the last 10-15 minutes of the webinar to make sure that we address all your concerns or questions.
Okay, thank you, Amit and Malay. So today our goal is to give you a holistic look at the Magento 1 to Magento 2 migration process. We want you to leave here with a clear understanding of what is involved, so you can make the best choice for your business. We'll take you through the reasons of why we're going to migrate, the pros and cons involved with migration, how a typical migration works, how long it takes, considerations that you need to make. And at the end, we'll give you a DotcomWeavers migration example so you can put it all into context. So why are we hosting this webinar? So for several years now, the e-commerce community has heard about something called Magento 1 end of life. This is, what it sounds like. Support for Magento 1 platform is going to end. Currently, it has been placed at June 2020. So that puts us about a year and 3 months out before, support is gone, before, your security patches will no longer be updated. And, you may already be experiencing significant performance issues, which will only get more pronounced as Magento support drops off. So staying on Magento 1 after the end of life is a risky proposition. and again, you may already be experiencing loss of performance. So being on the front lines of e-commerce development, it's our feeling that it's critical for Magento 1 businesses to start considering their migration options well ahead of time. So first of all, migrations take time, more or less depending on the complexity or the size of your operation, but you want to give yourself a comfortable buffer period where you can plan out the migration, find the right migration partner, actually migrate your site, and get a handle on your new platform so you can give your customers the best e-commerce experience possible. Something else to add, so there are more than 240,000 e-commerce merchants still on the Magento 1 platform. As we get closer to Magento 1 end of life, the demand for qualified e-commerce developers, Magento developers, is only going to increase. So you'll find that their availability will decrease as we get closer to end of life. So it's important to prioritize migration and get started now, at least thinking about it. A positive thing to look at here is that you'll be improving your customer experience, your business offerings and service across the board. Magento 1, as you'll see in a later slide, Magento 2, as you'll see in a later slide, has a host of benefits. It is a much different platform than Magento 1. Finally, up in the upper right, we've sort of slated, this is our professional opinion, where the time left to sort of safely start your migration is 104 days, which is roughly 3 months, which gives you, like I said, that nice sort of year buffer period with which to execute your migration properly. So, we went over the high-level risks of staying on Magento 1. Now I just want to give you a closer look at what you can expect if you do stay on Magento 1. So when end of life rolls around, you're going to face just a degradation of software support. This is because Magento 1 is built on PHP 5, which is an outdated coding language, where most e-commerce platforms today are running on PHP 7, which is faster, more flexible, especially when it comes to mobile devices, and much more compatible with current software integrations. You may already be experiencing some issues now. When Magento end of life comes around, there will be no more quality fixes or patches. So all of the updates that you sort of regularly install on your platform to improve the customer experience, to fix any issues that have come up, those will no longer be there. Any changes or enhancements you need to make will have to be done custom with another software developer, which will be costly, and again, it'll be all on you to implement. Probably the biggest issue here are the increased security risks. So as your code becomes more and more outdated, as security threats from outside become more sophisticated because they're dealing with newer software, the software that you're running to protect your customer data, your business data, will fall shorter and shorter of the mark, and just leave you vulnerable to a host of security problems. The extensions and customizations that your business runs on, these are your ERPs, your CRMs. These are the real core functionalities. They will experience a loss of performance, so they will no longer connect properly to the front end system. They may not offer the same functionality that your customers expect, and so all of the developers that were originally creating extensions for Magento 1 will likely have moved on to Magento 2, and the Magento 2 extensions offer a range of new functionalities that will streamline your business, automate things that you're doing manually, and give your customers that experience of a modern e-commerce platform. We touched on this already, so there are no future enhancements. Whatever you have at Magento end of life is what you're going to be stuck with, unless you pay for expensive custom development on older technology. And in e-commerce, it really the quality of your business is dependent entirely on the quality of your technologies. Even if you have the best products available, and your competitors are running on newer platforms that are future ready, it's quite likely that customers may move to them just for that better experience. And all of this kind of orbits around the decrease in customer satisfaction. People have certain expectations about their e-commerce experience, especially millennials. So when your website isn't working, when your shipping and order fulfillment systems are not up to par, people will notice these things, and you face unnecessary risks in losing customers, losing business. Now, this is a Magento 1 to 2 migration webinar, but we wanted to just share some other options because Magento 2 isn't necessarily the right platform for all businesses. You can, of course, stay on Magento 1, but we've already gone over the risks of doing that. Some other platforms that I'm sure you've heard about that we feel are excellent starter platforms, especially for businesses with limited SKUs or lesser functionality items are things like Shopify, BigCommerce, Salesforce, and Oracle. These are excellent platforms to get started on. So this is again something that you need to talk to your developer about because they can help align you with the right platform for your business. Again, our CTO chimed in that website overhauls are happening more and more often these days. Every sort of 3 to 5 years, it's standard. Just because the web technology is evolving, customer preferences are changing, and for Magento 1 merchants that are facing end of life, you don't want to have to do another migration outside of this sort of 3 to 5 year period. So it pays to pick the right platform for your needs. And now to go into Magento 2, its benefits, the sort of ecosystem, and what you can expect from migrating to this new platform, I'll turn things over to Amit.
Thanks, Reed. Before we go into Magento 2 and the landscape, what I really wanted to bring in to discuss was just to elaborate a little bit more on the last point which Reed touched upon. And as a business owner, I get to hear a lot of the same questions from other business owners, as well as from IT managers / decision makers. And M1 to M2 is just not a small upgrade. It's a major version change, and which means now that you also have the opportunity to really look at some other platforms and see, hey, is there another platform which is better or cheaper or more scalable for my business. And I always come back to the same conclusion looking at the competitors in the market. There is Shopify Plus, there is BigCommerce, they have the the business edition.
Sure.
And then we have customers who talk to us about Xcart, and they talk to us about WordPress and WooCommerce. I mean, there are other platforms, and don't get me wrong, they are also very popular. But it really depends upon what you're using them for, right? If you're a pure play e-commerce business, whether it be B2C, and better if you're B2B, I don't think there is any other platform in the market which is better than Magento. And we say this only because not only because we are working only with Magento, but we have worked with pretty much all of them. And we find this to be far superior compared to the feature set it offers, the flexibility it offers. And I just want to reiterate that in this webinar again. And this is just purely based on our experience, but Magento could also be an overkill if your business needs are very minimal.
Sure.
So, I mean, this is something you should, if you are considering something like this is probably the best time to do that, because this would allow you ample time and you will make a much more educated, holistic decision on what makes sense for your business.
Right, and that's something that you're going to want to find a developer who you trust and can discuss your business needs, your goals for the next few years to identify the right platform.
That is definitely correct. I mean, Magento is very powerful. It has a slew of features you can implement, but you also need to work with somebody who really knows its true potential.
Sure, and I think this is not necessarily a choice you want to make on your own. Even if you've heard of the power of something like Shopify or BigCommerce, Just because it's been marketed or you've heard about it doesn't necessarily mean that it may be the right move for your business. So, consult a developer, they can kind of point you in the right direction.
Right. And just to elaborate more on that discussion, I mean, let's talk a little bit about the Magento 2 landscape, right? So Magento 1, has been around for, I would say, almost a decade.
Mm-hmm.
And Magento 2 started coming around about a couple of years ago. And we strongly feel with the last release of Magento 2.3 is by far the best, I would say, update Magento has ever, done with its systems. I mean, the latest version is just, in our opinion, one of the, I would say, it is a huge leap forward. And the reason we say that is we also see with the acquisition of Magento by Adobe, we are seeing a lot more integration happening in the near future, which should be beneficial for the end consumer. Because eventually it might happen is that Adobe would incorporate its and others suite of products into Magento to benefit the whole e-commerce experience and the ecosystem.
And that partnership or the Adobe's acquisition of Magento, that was relatively recent, right? So we haven't even seen how much the platform is going to grow,
Absolutely. I mean, this just happened, about a year ago.
Right. So, Adobe is just, I guess, getting to know the Magento ecosystem, and, there's an exciting time ahead for Magento, I think, with that kind of backing.
Correct. And as you can see, even on Magento's site and how they are, positioning their products, their offerings, I mean, Magento is really definitely, getting involved with the businesses. They understand the pain points, and then they're offering you solutions really based on the size of your business and your needs. To me, with the latest versions, it's pretty future ready. The newer 2.3 is offering you progressive web apps, which in our opinion is the future of mobile commerce, because it might eventually take over, native and adaptive apps. Because if your site can behave like a mobile app, why do I need one?
Sure.
And progressive web apps will allow you to do that. As Magento is gaining more and more ground, as it's gaining more and more market share, we see that the developer community is a lot more engaged. Remember, Magento was pretty much built off the community, right? So you had the Magento community edition and or / open source, and you have the Magento Commerce. And you realize that it was the community who helped build the entire Magento Commerce platform, which we think is basically learning from the people who are in the trenches, understanding their issues, and then Magento goes back and really improves on its product.
Sure, and those people, those developers, who are in the trenches, who are talking to actual merchants, I mean, they may come up with benefits and new software that the Magento itself does not necessarily come up with. So I mean, you're benefiting from just so many different minds and thinking about this and developing new opportunities for Magento to merchants.
Right, and I mean that just goes back to as you have an active community, that means your ecosystem of extensions keep on growing. I mean, this is such a brilliant idea. The Magento marketplace, extensions marketplace, has been one of the most critical tools for the success of our clients. I mean, you have the basic Magento, but if you know which extensions to use, the exact functionality you're trying to achieve through your scoping, there's no other place than being in the marketplace. And we can say that by having launched a few extensions of our own in the marketplace, and we are seeing the true potential of it. And as you grow your business with Magento, you would notice Magento has started to offer a lot of integrated solutions in terms of whether it be the Commerce Cloud, where you don't really have to worry about any of the infrastructure, and Magento team would take care of all your hosting and support issues, to order management or BI, where you really get to know your customers' behavior, their tracking through proper analytics. Because at the end of the day, in this day and age, it is the customer data which is king, right? I mean, that's the biggest asset which a lot of e-commerce companies or any company is really trying to hone into.
Sure, Magento 2, think of it perhaps less as an e-commerce platform and more as a commerce platform, a place to build your business. If you want to do something that your competitors aren't doing, all of these things are possible on Magento too.
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the things we definitely find ourselves in a spot where, I mean, we are platform agnostic, but pretty much every situation which we have encountered in the last couple of years, when we hear the business case, I mean, there is no other platform which comes to our mind except Magento, because we know it has the capability to service all kinds of e-commerce needs.
Sure.
I would say more business needs. Having said that, I mean, the challenge is, right? I mean, in this 2019 ever-changing e-commerce landscape where we see the e-com is growing by leaps and bounds every year, is how do you really adapt fast enough to the changes, right? The key is we know the customers are changing. We know the customer behavior is changing. We know they are moving a lot more into mobile. We know the attention span is decreasing. So how do you really achieve all of this and yet maintain a profitable business in this environment? And that's always going to be a challenge as a business owner. But we feel that the right platform solves most of your issues, and that's one of the reasons we strongly believe in Magento 2.
Yeah, when a lot of new clients come to us, one of their biggest concerns seems to be that they're always trying to play catch up with the best practices of the year before, let alone get ahead of what is currently winning the e-commerce market today. So Magento is certainly adaptable, and it allows businesses to be proactive rather than reactive, which is just so important in e-commerce today and definitely in the future.
Right, and I think that's where we think the cost of ownership, I would say the total cost of really running your operations, if done right with Magento, is very, very effective. The ROI is pretty high, and that's what we see this happening with our clients, and that's one of the reasons we really go into this direction. I mean, at this point, we have touched upon these in the earlier slides by Reed, where the Magento 2 benefits, right? Magento 1 definitely gave us a good starter platform. It really unleashed the true potential of, I would say, e-commerce for small business, SMB space. And now Magento 2 is building up on those, I would say, enhancements. M1, we have had a lot of customers who have performance issues, security issues as they are going through it. But M2's job was to really build on all of those deficiencies. And when we look at M2, we see it has pretty much improved leaps and bounds in all of these areas. When it comes to the CMS or how the products are being edited, or the entire import-export modules for product management, or whether it be the caching mechanisms, there's just massive improvements where we are like, wow, this is what the customers were waiting for. This is what pretty much everybody wanted.
So I guess it's important to think about Magento 2 isn't just a better version of Magento 1. Magento 2 is something that has listened to the needs of e-commerce businesses, of e-commerce customers, and anticipated the needs of future e-commerce businesses and customers, and really given developers and the business owners a platform to meet those needs and exceed them.
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the ways you have to look at it. I mean, yes, it has a lot of technical benefits. Once you are under the hood, I mean, we could give you hundreds of reasons why it's better than M1. But more importantly, you have to look at it at a higher level from a business perspective. I mean, this is the platform which will help you grow for the next few years. And as in this space, we all know you always have to invest in technology, but investing in the right technology is what is going to make you future ready. As we again to just elaborate on what we are talking about in this process, this M1 to M2 migration is just not a straight up migration. This is also an opportunity for you to really, open, you can say there's the opening up a can of worms. I mean, if you look at it from that perspective, but it's actually a good way to really look at your entire tech stack, your e-com setup, to see what can I do, what bells and whistles can I add to really improve the customer experience. Right?
Yeah. What opportunities are in your industry that you've been looking at for years maybe and not capitalizing on, not going after because you didn't have the technology involved? This is a great time to, take your bucket list of things you'd like to do with your business and give yourself the technology that can help you achieve them.
Absolutely. I mean, and the first question which might come to your mind is, that means it's going to cost us more. It's going to take more time. But think about it this way: if you do it right when you begin, your cost of ownership keeps on is much better. You also have to think about the opportunity cost. The 2019 customer is very smart. They're avid mobile users. They know what they want. And if you can't give them in the right way, there are plenty of options for them to choose from. So we consider this migration as an opportunity where you can talk to companies like us, or are you to a developer, and see, hey, this is the issue. How can I achieve it? Whether it be, you have an issue with the UGC, or whether you're looking to really make sure there's a better integration with your ERP or your CRM. I mean, this is the right place to really start, right time to start thinking about it. The new age commerce is all about personalized, unified experiences. What can you do to bring that to the table? Because at the end of the day, you have to have a differentiator, right? Because otherwise you're just in this race where there's always somebody who will take over if you're not on top of the game. And that's something you always have to keep in mind as you're going through this. And there is no better opportunity than now at this stage, when you're thinking about the migration, to really think about it holistically. What do you want to achieve? And as Reed said, have your bucket list. This is what I want to get done. How do you go forward with it? So as we talk about this, now I'll turn the mic over to Malay, who will talk more in terms of the I would say the crux, what is involved in the actual migration and the process behind it.
Well, thank you, Amit, for the introduction. And so let's review how the M1 to M2 migration actually works. We can do a direct one-to-one migration and keep everything simple. However, the migration is a bit complex. Thus, it provides us ample opportunities, as Amit mentioned earlier, to review and upgrade the site and its features. The first step to any migration would be to make a full backup of your M1 store, including the database and the file structure, and make sure to clone the data. At no point should we work on the live site for the migration process. This is also the time to analyze the site and the business requirement. Here we'll help you decide to keep what is necessary. This is the time to check and see if the checkout is optimized. Are all the PLP pages loading correctly? Are we handling the JavaScript properly? The goal of the migration is not to reinvent the wheel, but use what Magento has to offer. Let's check whether your current themes, extensions, and custom codes are compatible with the Magento 2. If not, then we should make up appropriate changes. But remember that Magento 1 extension will not work with M2. You will experience severe compatibility issues while integrating. The goal should be to only install the relevant extensions that are available and required for your M2 store. Before migrating the clone data, we should review and remove all the outdated and useless data that's out there, including the logs, the recently viewed products, compared products, etc., etc. Next, we will migrate the Magento environment to the hosting server. And once the migration process is successfully completed, we perform intense testing on the store to ensure that everything functionally works.
Right, and this thanks, Malay. I mean, this really goes back to the previous conversation we were having, that this is an opportunity for you to take a holistic approach, right? M1 to M2, as Mala is talking about, is not a direct integration. There's a lot of, I mean, this is also, a time to clean house and
Sure.
make sure you build on the foundation which can support you for the next few years to come.
Yeah, anytime, a client comes to us, whether it's for, a migration assessment, just curious about a new site or actually wants to work with us to develop something, we kind of encourage them to think bigger, like, not just addressing current needs, but, what are your goals? Where can we help? And then, in the whole process that Malay just described, I mean, we'll take you through, everything will be structured properly, everything will be executed properly. And at the end of this, you'll come out with, a platform that isn't just a better version of your old site, but, this is something that, you can leverage to achieve, really remarkable growth, like we've seen with, several of our clients. So back to you, Malay.
Thank you, guys. So now let's take a look at the migration timeline. And this is just for a typical small scale project. It'll take anywhere about 3 to 4 months.
Hey, Malay, can I jump in?
Sure.
What's a small scale project? Just, I mean, how many SKUs are we talking about? Is this like, would you call it a mid-sized business? Like, where are we at here?
Here we're talking about, a small to mid-sized business. We don't have any additional integration. There's no ERP that we need to integrate with. There are no additional. It's a simple team that we want to install, get the client up and running as soon as possible.
Okay, cool, thank you.
With that being said, the first phase of the project is discovery. Again, let's go back to the opportunities we were talking about. Right from the beginning, the client will work with a qualified project manager and a Magento solution specialist whose primary goal would be to help the client close the gaps between their objective and their technology, right? Turning their pain points into the new opportunities to engage with customers. During this phase, we listen to our clients' technical requirements and understand the business goals. We'll work alongside you to research the market, the customers, and the competitors. This is also a good time to analyze the performance of the current site, what changes we need to make. We should review the heat maps, the category structure, and analyze the search. Search is, as you know, is very important. We will ensure that search is, optimized properly. Helping the customer find the right product quickly is essential to increasing the conversion rate. The goal of this phase is to work together to create a plan for success. The first and this next planning phase go hand in hand. During this phase, we define the project scope document and project plan. We collaborate with the client to generate our user stories, create high fidelity wireframe to identify the functionality and also the user navigation. We would identify all the additional costs, document the extensions, and define the project timeline. All of these would become part of the scope document. The scope would be the basis for the design and development throughout the project. And the development phase is where the project comes to life. Here we switch from the waterfall to agile approach, and our UI UX expert will design the site based on the client's feedback, and once the designs have been approved, our Magento certified developers would code the scripts, integrations, and customizations to produce the end result. DCW will work with you to set a launch date and walk you through the process of setting up the hosting and migrating to the new site and the host server. Once we have an approval from you, we will launch the site.
Thanks, Malay. So can we just go back to the timeline for a second?
Sure.
So let's say, can you just let me know, like, so as far as a small business, a medium-sized business, and then something, like enterprise level, like what's the rough timeline on a migration for each of those? Is it drastically different between them, or are we looking at only a difference of a few months? I mean, where are we at here? When someone comes to us initially to, or any developer to when, they can expect to launch a site at the end of the process you went through in the previous slide?
Right, that's a good question. The timeline will vary tremendously from the type of business and type of integration we're doing, right? Anywhere it could be as less as, like I said, 3 to 4 months, and I've seen it where it could go into 10 months all the way up to a year or so, depending on the type of project that we're doing. Right. And I'll give you an example of it soon. So here, let's take a look at one of our clients who recently we migrated from M1 to M2.X last year. Branster is a Florida-based retailer that sell outdoor furniture, grills, and accessories. They had multiple M1 sites, but they quickly realized that in order to grow at the rate which they projected, they were finding it difficult to customize the current site. So we helped them migrate from M1 to M2 using multi-store feature of Magento. During this migration, we saw the opportunity to rebrand. Thus, we had a holistic approach to the site design to create a cohesive brand identity and uniform customer experience. During the discovery phase, we paid special attention to the customer experience and their internal processing. To address both of these concerns, we used the RMA module and the sales rep module. By doing so, they saw not only enhanced customer experience, but also much efficient backend processing. Now let's go over to the next slide. And here, you can take a look at how long it took for us to migrate this client over. We started the project in November 2017. And by the time the final site was launched, it was August 2018, as you know, it's 10 months long. So
and there were 8 versions of the site on a single backend?
8 different versions of a site on a single backend. So, you can see complexity of a project would determine the time it'll take for us to implement. So again, as you mentioned earlier, the days, 104 days to finally, think about and get started on the project is what we could have, right? If it's a decent enough project, it'll take us close to over 6 months, somewhere between a year to complete.
Right. I mean, here I just wanted to add a couple of. Please go ahead. I think. So here, just to talk about this from this case study example, not only did we migrate them from M1 to M2, a lot of time was also spent to make sure we found the right extensions from the marketplace, which could really supercharge their business. And these were some of them which we put in, and there were many more which we are not even which we don't have the time to talk about. The point is, as you are making this move, as you are going through this process, as Malay mentioned, it might take up to 10 months, as daunting as it sounds, it might. So make sure you have the right time and resources in place to do that, and you're actually planning it well in advance, so that you're not scrambling for it towards the end. I mean, that's the key.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why we sort of gave, in the beginning of the webinar, we talked about, the time left to sort of safely start your migration. It can be done more quickly, and we've certainly done it more quickly, but, it's one of those, it's not something you're going to want to rush, especially, if you're fighting for, security improvements, functionality improvements after Magento 1 end of life while you're still in the midst of a migration. So yeah, here we are. I mean, that should give you a holistic understanding of, what a migration entails. You're always going to want to talk to, your development agency to, understand the specifics of what's involved. So just to recap a few things, the risks of not migrating from Magento 1, whether this is to Magento 2, which of course we recommend for most businesses, but the risk of not migrating is staying on Magento 1. I mean, at the end of the day, you're not going to have any support except, from a third party that you're paying to help you on a system that's already outdated. It's one of those. It's not a good idea when it comes to e-commerce to try and make the best of a bad situation when there are other alternatives. You're going to lose, security updates. So whatever patches you're currently running are going to be the only thing between your customer data and your site from, hackers or just other accidents that happen. Your extensions, these are even your critical things, your ERP, your CRM, like these will eventually break. We're designed to run and be compatible with, code, with software, and with an internet that sort of it has evolved. So these are considerations, and again, you're going to have to pay for expensive workarounds to get them to work. Still not as well as some of the newer extensions that are available. Amit talked briefly about the huge developer community that was involved in helping Magento 1 get to where it was, and are now helping Magento 2 become the leading e-commerce platform on the internet. No one is going to be focusing, or very few people are going to be focusing on Magento 1 extensions like that. It is extinct, and we have a lot of people focusing on Magento 2. So, the risk there is you will have a limited ecosystem of extensions to choose from if you stay on Magento 1. Your customer experience is going to degrade, as we discussed. People just have different expectations. Amit mentioned progressive apps. We've mentioned mobile optimization a few times. Malay mentioned, the importance of search. All of these things are part and parcel of, future-ready e-commerce system like Magento 2. They are not necessarily native to Magento 1. And the final risk, which this whether you're on Magento 1 or an older platform, customers have an eye for the latest e-commerce trends. They know what works. They what's comfortable with them. What's intuitive to use, and when the checkouts are faster, when the search is easier, when the site is more inviting, all of these things that come from a rebranding. If those things aren't there, they're going to go elsewhere. Whether sooner or later.
Yeah, I totally agree. At the end of the day, these days, customers have way too many choices. So it's really up to us to take control of the entire journey and see how we can offer them the best in your capacity of whatever you can do, so that you keep them and you have them come back and buy again and again.
Sure.
Right. And as we discussed, this is again a good opportunity. If you're on M1 to look into M2, and it's also a good opportunity not only from a platform perspective, but also from your e-com setup perspective to see, okay, this is what you have and where do you want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just again wanted to thank everybody for joining. We're gonna take a look at some questions, but before we jump into those, just wanted to by participating in the webinar, we really appreciate you being here, and we're giving out free migration assessments. So if you're a Magento 1 merchant and you either have been thinking about Magento migration or have not considered it yet, we invite you to get in touch with DotcomWeavers to talk to us. We're giving out free migration assessments. We'll figure out, we'll understand what your business goals are and help you get to where you want to be. So if you'd like to schedule a free assessment, then please email info@DotcomWeavers.com. You can use the subject line Magento migration assessment, and we'll be in touch to set up a time to talk with you, take a look at your site, and give you our professional opinion as a Magento business solution specialist as to what the viable options are for your business.
So this is now open up to questions. So please feel free to ask, anything which you have in your mind. I see one coming up in terms of, which is talking about, so, what it's going to take, how much it's going to cost. Cost is, it really depends. I would say it all depends upon your current M1 setup, how it's done, what's involved. And what are you trying to achieve? As you can see, it's not a small upgrade, and at a minimum, we are looking at anywhere between 3 to 4 months for a proper migration. So keeping that in mind, that's something you should think from a budgeting perspective. But other than that, this only can come in the entire scoping exercise which we do to understand what is the cost, what needs to be done.
Sure, thanks, Amit. If we had to put a figure, just in terms of, let's say you're looking for the complete migration Magento 1 to 2 migration suite, everything we discussed, all the enhancements, for a medium-sized business, just, where are we looking at for, working with a qualified developer?
I mean, we wrote a blog about it, right? It's on our
Sure.
website.
Okay.
We did a whole detailed analysis on how it was done. I mean, it all depends, and not to beat around the bush in terms of pricing, it could vary anywhere from 30 grand to 100 grand, depending upon the complexity.
Right.
So I would say if you're in a medium-sized business, you're somewhere in the middle. I mean, depending upon what's involved, and that's what I would say.
Okay. Second question we have, which will be the last one we're going to take today. What are the benefits of choosing Magento Commerce over the open source solution?
We built our own business, right? We're building a lot of Magento community sites.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got involved into Magento Commerce, and we're noticing, I mean, definitely, it all depends upon what your business goals are, what your budgetary restraints are.
Sure.
But if you could afford it, I mean, now Magento Commerce Cloud is a very viable option for all small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is a much superior product compared to the community. It offers you a lot in terms of B2B tools, in terms of BI, as well as performance. I mean, that's something, it's hard to really say which one you should go for. It requires a deeper discussion, but if you had the option to go with Magento Commerce, which is their,
Right.
licensed version, I would say that's something should be given a much serious thought as you proceed in this space.
Would you say that Magento Commerce is definitely the sort of platform of choice for a company heavily focused on B2B sales?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm very passionate about how I think about it, and to me, it's like a no-brainer. Because, the amount of B2B features it offers, I haven't seen any other competitor in the market. And you can get a lot of those features in the community as well. But it all depends. It also increases your tech load, your debt, your technical debt,
Mm-hmm.
right? Plus, you're relying on a lot of modules, which requires constant upgrades, and there's no support from Magento. So I would say, Magento Commerce Cloud, maybe, I think would be the platform to really think about as you go through this process.
So yeah, I mean, Magento has the technology to take you as far as you want to go. So I think in conclusion, this is the time to start thinking about migration if you haven't already. Magento end of life is a little more than a year out. There are going to be, if you're still running on Magento 1, I mean, you're already facing, a deficit, or you're at a disadvantage with your competitors. So moving to Magento 2, starting to think about that and finding the right developer for your needs, or at least even someone to help point you in the right direction is going to be a critical first step that, we highly recommend taking within, the next 3-4 months. So you can follow the timeline that Malay laid out and, launch a future-ready website that can, take your business, 5 years, 10 years into the future. I see no end to, the improvements that Magento 2 is going to undergo. So on behalf of, all of us at DotcomWeavers, Amit, Malay, and myself, we want to thank you for joining the webinar. We hope this was educational and helpful. And if you have, any additional questions or are interested in that free migration assessment, reach out to us. You can go to DotcomWeavers.com or reach out to us at info@DotcomWeavers.com, and we would be happy to set up a time for us to talk about, where your business can go next and, how it can get onto a platform like Magento 2.
Again, I want to thank everyone for their time here. And as Reed mentioned, the free assessment, please try to take advantage of that opportunity. It would be a huge help as a business owner. I could understand how important that aspect could be. And our job here would be to provide you with as much information as possible and to educate about this entire process so that, you don't feel like you're in the dark and you have enough time to make a decision.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, Amit. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We look forward to hearing from you, and we'll be following up with you after the webinar. So again, reach out to DotcomWeavers if you have any questions, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone.